So if you're a Volkswagen fan, you're probably used to seeing this or this every day. But have you ever seen this or this? In this video, I'm going to be showing you some of the weirdest Volkswagens you've probably never heard of. And if you're anything like me, you're going to want to probably figure out how to get them. Welcome to VW Nerd Out. This absolute beauty and the first car on this list is the Volkswagen SP2. But to understand how this super rare and super sporty coupe came to be, we first have to understand Brazil's love for Volkswagens. Volkswagen do Brazil, or Volkswagen of Brazil, was established in 1953 to more locally and cost-effectively assemble the Volkswagen Type 1 in South America. The Type 1 was called the Fusca in Brazil, but you may better know it as the Beetle. The Fusca would go on to be the #1 selling vehicle in Brazil from 1958 to 1987, and would skyrocket the popularity of the Volkswagen brand in the country. You can still regularly see Type 1s and Type 2s driving around on the road just the same as any other car. This success and the brand popularity would lead the company to want to design vehicles to appeal specifically to the Brazilian market. And let me tell you, they let the designers absolutely cook on these designs. The SP2 was the first of many cars designed with the Brazilian people's taste in mind. I actually have the Hot Wheels for the SP2 on my wall, right here. It was built on the Type 3 chassis, which was a pretty common vehicle back in the early days of Volkswagen. This car featured a 7-liter air-cooled boxer engine, which was pretty much just a souped-up version of the 1.6 Beetle engine. It came from the factory with 64 horsepower and an eye-watering 0 to 60 in 17.4 seconds. Unfortunately, only 10,205 cars were produced from 1972 to 1976, which makes sense why it's so hard to find them today. There's also the fact that they were only produced in Brazil, and it's honestly not the easiest place to try to export cars from. There was also an SP1 with a smaller, unmodified 1.6-liter engine, but only 88 were ever produced. The SP2 did not sell well, mainly due to the fact that it cost 29,700 Cruise euros, or 16,038 USD, which was almost the price of 2 brand new Fuscas at the time. So adjusting for inflation, that would be, $88,973.98. Hold on. That's pretty much a brand new Cayman S now. I guess it kind of would have been the Cayman S-ish of the time. Actually, how much did the Porsche 912 cost? Okay, so for 1976, the Porsche 912e base price was $10,920. That's USD. So the SP2 actually cost more? Wow, I did not expect that, to be honest. Because the 912 had a modified flat 4 out of the 412. So they were pretty much similar. And the 912 makes like 30 more horsepower. That's crazy. No wonder they only sold 10,000 of them. While not very many of these cars were made, the SP2 would live on in multiple more widely produced vehicles. The SP2 was the earliest predecessor to the VW EA425 project. This project would become the Porsche 924, 944, and 968. But besides being the stepping stones for the EA425, the design cues of the SP2 would also carry over into the much more widely produced vehicle, the Brasilia. Also known as the Type 321, the Volkswagen Brasilia was built on the Beetle or Fusca chassis. The Brasilia was designed to be this smaller hatchback coupe wagon truck van thing to take advantage of the lower taxes on trucks in Brazil. This car was sold all over South America from 1973 to 1982. These cars do look similar to the Volkswagen 412, which we did receive in the US, but it is much smaller in size. This car features the 1.6-liter air-cooled engine, the same as the Beetle, making 44 horsepower for the single carbureted engine and then 65 horsepower for the dual carbureted version. This car was offered in both 3- and 5-door configurations. These 3-door wagons are not something you'll really see anywhere else in the world. However, they are extremely popular here in Brazil, which I completely understand because every single Volkswagen I own has 2 doors. And honestly, in my opinion, I think 2 doors look better than 4 doors. Well, maybe not all the time. I don't know. Let me know in the comments if you think there's a car that looks better with 4 doors instead of 2 doors. You know what they say? 4 doors, more horse. But as the 70s were coming to an end, it was time for Volkswagen to replace the Beetle and the Brasilia with a more modern front-engine, front-wheel drive vehicle. This would allow them to remain more competitive in the Brazilian car market. So to continue on the trend of Volkswagen of Brazil just completely ignoring the Volkswagen lineup in the rest of the world, they thought they were just too cool for the Golf. So they said, F it, we'll just make it even cooler. So they dropped the F and they made the Gol. And what they came up with was this Golf Polo Scirocco looking thing. And I hope they gave whoever the design team was for this car, because they effing killed it on this thing. I didn't even know these things existed until 20 minutes ago, and now I'm trying to figure out how to import one. The Gol was based on the B1 and B2 VW Audi platform, meaning that it has a longitudinally mounted front-wheel drive engine. Shout out to all the Passat people out there. I know the 5 of you that are watching this. This unfortunately complicates things if you want to do a swap to an engine like a VR6. At least the 1.8T is sort of still possible. The Gol began production in 1980, and they actually originally came with a 1.3-liter air-cooled engine. Similarly to the Golf and Rabbit, the Gol also got a GTI variant. In 1989, the Gol GTI was the first Brazilian-built car to utilize fuel injection. The Gol GTI 2000 had a 2-liter 8-valve with 119 horsepower and a top speed of 115 miles per hour. Wait a minute. Wait, that's more than the ABA. What were those Brazilians cooking down there? There was also a Gol GT from 1984 to 1986 and a Gol GTS from 1987 to 1994, which used a slightly smaller 1.8 engine making only 94 horsepower. But on top of all this already cool stuff, the Gol platform was actually used for 3 more variants in Brazil. They were the Voyage sedan, Parati wagon, and Saveiro pickup truck. And guess what? They all had 2-door variants. Just look at this 2-door wagon. Does it make sense? Absolutely not. But is it cool as Absolutely. And apparently the Volkswagen Audi Group of America thought so too, because from 1987 to 1994, the Voyage and Parati were sold under the Fox name in America. I actually had no idea those two were related, but you'll probably find a fox dumped in the woods if you look long enough. The second generation of the Gol, the G2, hit the market in 1994, and no, this is not an EG Civic. The G2 Gol would be referred to as the Gol Bolagina, or Bubble Gol, because of its modern, rounded design. The first generation G1 Gol then became known as the Gol Quadrado, or Square Gol. The G2 also got a GTI trim, which received a 2-liter 16-valve in 1996, bumping the horsepower to 139. Volkswagen do Brazil also partnered with Ford to provide a 1-liter engine for this generation of Gol. Believe it or not, this is not the only time you're going to hear Volkswagen and Ford partnering on this list. In fact, I'm actually going to cover 2 more of their collaborations later in this video, but you're just going to have to wait to see. Anyway, the G2 Gol was produced in a time period where Volkswagen actually made cool special edition vehicles. There was the Gol Rolling Stones edition after the band's Voodoo Lounge tour through Brazil, as well as the Gol Atlanta after the Olympic Games that took place in Atlanta, Georgia. Unfortunately, this generation of Gol was plagued with poor quality control and cheap plastic parts. This led Volkswagen to losing its spot as #1 car brand in Brazil for the 4th quarter of 1997. But don't worry, they got it back at the 2nd quarter of 1998 when they revealed the 5-door Gol models. In 1999, the Gol was refreshed for the G3 generation, giving the option for airbags and ABS.
Overrated as in my opinion.
The G2 with the 1-liter engine was also still sold alongside the G3 as the Gol Special. This generation also introduced the Gol Total Flex, which was the first flex fuel vehicle in South America, because apparently they wanted to have the option to run both gasoline and alcohol.
Reach for one tonight!
The 1-liter engine also eventually got upgraded to a 1-liter 16-valve turbo engine. The G4 released in 2005 and was pretty much a facelift of the G3 with little improvements. The G5 abandoned the original Gol platform that had pretty much been unchanged since the 1980s in favor of the PQ24, which was the new Polo platform at the time. This generation also had a Voyage and a Saveiro. The Gol unfortunately ended production in 2023 and has been replaced with the Mark 6 Polo, which they are calling the Polo Track in Brazil. But for now, let me stop looking into how to import a Gol, and let's talk about something you can get in the United States. The Volkswagen Type 181, also called the Thing in the United States, is one of the wackiest things Volkswagen has ever produced and sold to the public. The Type 181 was originally developed for the West German Army. I really honestly should have paid more attention in history class because I totally forgot that there was a West Germany at one point, and also like the whole ass Berlin Wall, like totally forgot about that. And all I honestly remember from that part of history was JFK saying he was a jelly donut or something like that.
Ich bin ein Berliner.
But anyway, I remember the first Volkswagen show I went to with my dad. We were walking around to the air-cooled section and I saw this thing. And then I rightly asked, what the is this thing? And then he said, exactly. And I was so confused. And then I didn't really get it at first, and then that was the day that I learned that the Volkswagen Thing that I saw was a Volkswagen Thing. The Thing was sold from 1968 to 1983 in Europe, and and only from 1973 to 1974 in the US. And this is because the things were extremely unsafe and they couldn't pass the US increasing safety standards. Because, you know, the US government doesn't like fun very much. And honestly, how fun could a 0 to 60 in 23 seconds be? I mean, you're pretty much just driving a tank at that point. But enough of the old school stuff, let's jump to the more modern era of Volkswagens. Have you ever thought to yourself, man, I really wish I could buy myself a Rolls Royce or a Bentley, but I've sold my soul to the Volkswagen and Audi group? Well, never fear, because in 2003, Volkswagen released the Phaeton. Welcome to the era of Volkswagen and Audi where they couldn't decide what to do with their brands. And because of this, Volkswagen got some of the coolest cars and engines because they didn't save them all for Audi. Like, if their business model didn't change from that point in time, we would 100% have a Daza in the Golf R. And probably a bunch of other VR6 crazy powered, overpowered stuff, but nope. Nope, we just have the same 2-liter turbo in everything. Anyway, ran over, let's get back to the Phaeton. So at this point, Volkswagen was trying to shift their brand image to make their brand seem more luxurious rather than like an economy brand. You know, that back in the 70s and 80s, the Volkswagen was the rabbit, you know what I mean? It was the bottom of the barrel economy car where you had America filled with big muscle cars and V8s. It was this tiny little hatchback box. And since then, they've been trying to be more luxurious. And again, this was totally forgetting that they had their own luxury car brand, Audi. So they went ahead and they released the Phaeton, which was targeted at the big body sedans from Mercedes and BMW. And again, if we look at the lineup from Audi, the A8 is literally the same thing. They even share the exact same chassis. And the Phaeton actually shares its chassis with the Bentley Continental GT. So I guess technically you could still get the Bentley if you wanted to, even if you sold your soul to. The Phaeton hit the US market in 2004 and performed worse than expected, so it was pulled from its lineup in 2006. However, it sold decently overseas, so it was sold until 2016. Over its lifetime, the Volkswagen Phaeton has gotten some of the coolest engine options the company has offered. This includes the 3.2 and 3.6 VR6, which is honestly kind of crazy because this car weighs like 5,000 pounds. Yeah, those engines were definitely not happy. It had a 0 to 60 of 9.4 seconds with the VR6. That's slower than a Mark 1 GTI. They also came with the V10 TDI and W12, which is more widely known for being in the Touareg. The R50 Touareg is one of the best looking SUVs in my opinion to date, and I'm so disappointed that we never got them in the US. Like, who wouldn't want to be able to pull a 747? But again, back to the Phaeton. Both of those absolutely amazing feats of German engineering propelled this tank from 0 to 60 in about 6 seconds. It also had a 4.2 V8 and a 3.0 TDI, but those are pretty much just normal Audi engines. But if you look for a Phaeton today, you'll likely see that they have faced some turbo depreciation. Looking at a couple here, it looks like the V8 ones go for around $6 grand-ish and are way easier to find than the W12. And it looks like the W12s go anywhere from like 5 to 20, depending on how like clapped they are. So the V8 Phaeton had an MSRP of $66,950, and the W12 had an MSRP of $94,600. So while that $94,000 does seem astronomical, the Phaeton was actually the cheapest 12-cylinder sedan you could buy at the time. So you were getting a lot of car for the money back then, and you're getting even more car for the money now. So while we're on the topic of failures, why don't we look at another failed Volkswagen model? Have you ever seen one of these on the road? Well, you're probably thinking, yeah, but why did you show me a picture of a Dodge Caravan? Isn't this video about weird Volkswagens? And yes, you are correct, but let me show you the silliest thing Volkswagen has done to date.
The company admits it rigged 11 million vehicles worldwide to cheat on emissions tests.
Alright, so maybe it's the second silliest. So let's just ignore the environment for now and take a look at this confusing business move. This is the Volkswagen Routan. Oh wait, that's the Chrysler Town & Country. This is actually the Volkswagen Routan. I know in the beginning of the video I said you'd want to try to get all these cars, but you should want to get this so that you can scrub it from the earth. So to understand why this minivan became a thing, we have to go all the way back to 20th century Volkswagen. So in the early days of Volkswagen in America, we got the Type 2, which you may better know as the bus. Volkswagen switched over to water-cooled engines, we then got the Vanagon, and then eventually got the Eurovan. The Eurovan was produced all the way from 1992 to 2003, and honestly didn't change very much. And the best part about it, came with a 12-valve VR6 that was tweaked just a little bit to work in the Eurovan. And you could even buy it fully configured as a camper. This would 100% be my van of choice if I had a van like it for whatever reason. But once Volkswagen killed off the Eurovan, they were completely missing out on the minivan and van segment that was pretty large in the US. So the Routan was the result of a collaboration between Volkswagen and the Chrysler Group, and this was before Chrysler acquired all those weird brands like Fiat. So the Routan didn't sell well because it was essentially competing with itself. The Routan cost a few $1,000s more than the Dodge Caravan and the Chrysler Town & Country and didn't offer any more features. So it didn't make it worth paying the extra couple $1,000s for the person who was going for a minivan. And the last 2 years of its production were sold mostly to rental companies as fleet vehicles. Realistically, the only thing the Routan had going for it that was made it better than the Town & Country and the Caravan was that it just looked slightly better. But honestly, if you're going to drive a minivan, you don't really care what the thing you're driving looks like.
The Volkswagen Routan is not only unique in its German-tuned suspension, but in its maximum attention to detail. From individually operated DVD players, child monitoring mirror, elegant leather seating surfaces, and wireless headsets, to its voluminous storage compartments. Make it the hero to any family. Carefree maintenance.
It's what the people want.
However, while the Routan was overall a failure for Volkswagen, it was a stepping stone that was necessary for Volkswagen to start producing vehicles exclusively for the US market. In 2017, Volkswagen would launch the Atlas SUV, which would be much more of a success than the Routan. And it's all probably because they put the VR6 back in something instead of whatever the that stupid Pentastar V6 was. And believe it or not, Volkswagen was actually selling a minivan years before the Routan actually came out. So why did they even bother with the Routan if this thing already existed? Before you say, well, it's because it's cheaper to produce things closer to where they're being made instead of, paying for import taxes and things that cut into profits. Trust me, I know business. I got a very useful degree in it. And then I still decided to get my master's degree. So this is the Volkswagen Sharan, and guess what? This Volkswagen was also a collaboration with another American car manufacturer. Remember what I said about Volkswagen and Ford being back on the same team again? Well, they're back together, and they made this silly looking thing. In 1995, Ford and Volkswagen developed a minivan to be sold worldwide. Volkswagen released the Sharan and Ford released the Galaxy. These minivans were essentially the same thing, just with different badges. So basically it's like what Toyota and Subaru did with the 8.6 and the BRZ. And guess what? No Pentastar here. The goats are back. The Sharan got the 1.8T, the VR6, and even the 1.9 TDI. And honestly, I would be okay driving a minivan as long as it sounded like this. But unfortunately, the reason the US never got the Sharan all comes down to business. In the US, Ford already offered the Aerostar minivan and feared that the Sharan and the Galaxy would create unnecessary competition in the market. Exactly how the Routan had unfair competition when it was trying to compete with itself with the Chrysler Town & Country and the Dodge Caravan. And this is what unfortunately would lead Volkswagen to get in bed with Chrysler and make the Routan. So the Sharan got its second generation in 2010 and then continued production all the way up until 2023 when it was discontinued. Since we've already talked about Volkswagen's biggest car, how will we talk about Volkswagen's smallest car? So this little guy is the Volkswagen Lupo. Lupo was added to Volkswagen's lineup in 1998 due to the Polos increasing in size and weight over the years. It happens to the best of us. The Lupo was built on a modified Mark III Polo platform and was nearly 10 inches shorter in length. That is a significant amount. Lupo also means wolf in Latin, which was named after Wolfsburg, Germany, where the car was built originally. So while the Lupo was a small economy-focused car, it was surprisingly a catalyst for a lot of technological advances for Volkswagen. The Lupo 3L was one of the first hyper-mileage vehicles and was designed specifically to be as fuel efficient as possible. The 3L stands for 3 liters, which is the amount of fuel the car would use over the span of 100 kilometers. That's 78 miles per gallon in freedom units, which is crazy. The engineers went all out and designed a 1.2 liter 3-cylinder TDI. Eco diesel detected. And an automated manual transmission with a clutch to optimize shifting efficiency. This car was also one of, if not the first car to incorporate that auto engine shutoff when you come to a stop that everyone absolutely hates in every new car now. But I'm sure it was cool back then. They also opted for aluminum and magnesium components rather than the much heavier traditional steel, which cut the Lupo's weight from 2,150 pounds to just 1,830 pounds. That's basically the same weight as a stock Mark I Rabbit. That thing would be an absolute rocket with a 1.8T in it. And of course, it's been done. Or even more ridiculous, how about a dual VR6 powered 3,000 horsepower Lupo? And guess what? Everyone's favorite engine that eats cam followers came from the Lupo. You already know I'm talking about the FSI. Hi to all my Mark V people out there, but honestly, I'd rather deal with the cam belt, the cam follower, and cam chain problems than touch an early TSI. So Lupo FSI was actually the first direct injection engine that Volkswagen produced. Direct injection was used to increase efficiency and fuel mileage. The Lupo FSI was essentially the gas version of the 3L, and the 1.4-liter 16-valve engine used 4.9 liters per 100 kilometers, or 48 miles per gallon. That's honestly pretty similar to the gas mileage of the modern 1.4Ts that we find in the Jetta here in the US, which I guess are actually also 1.4 16-valve engines. In 2000, Volkswagen released the Lupo GTI, which came with a naturally aspirated 1.6 16-valve, making 123 horsepower, and had a 0 to 60 in 7.8 seconds. The Lupo GTI is considered the successor to the Mark I GTI due to its small and lightweight chassis, allowing the underpowered engine in modern standards to keep up with much faster cars. Unfortunately, the Lupo was discontinued in 2005 and replaced with... Wait, hey, no way. We've gone full circle again. It was replaced by the Fox, which is a Brazilian-developed model between the Gol and the Polo. Shout out to Brazil, I guess, for coming in clutch again. So lastly, let's talk about Volkswagen's pickup truck that's missing from the land of big pickup trucks. In 2010, Volkswagen decided they wanted to get into the mid-size, heavy-duty pickup truck game. The Volkswagen Amarok is their entry into that market. The name Amarok references a wolf deity in Inuit mythology. Like a deity, the Amarok was the spiritual successor to the Volkswagen Caddy, which was essentially a Mark I Golf cut in half and a pickup truck bed thrown in the back. But unlike the Caddy, the Amarok is a body-on-frame vehicle and has a heavy-duty front double wishbone suspension. Also, unlike the Caddy, this truck came in both a single and double cab without creating whatever this abomination is. But the best part about this truck is that it in fact came with multiple different TDIs. It also came with the FSI and TSI, but who cares about that? Not only did they offer the 2-liter TDI, but also the 2-liter bi-turbo TDI. Twice the turbos makes it extra eco-friendly. This version of the Amarok could tow up to 7,000 pounds, which is way more than enough to tow around whatever old Volkswagen you have that probably has electrical issues and is going to leave you stranded. The truck also later came with a 3-liter V6 TDI, which made even more torque. These trucks are commonly used in Europe and Australia for off-roading and other similar truck-like events. In 2022, Ford and Volkswagen got back together and gave the Amarok a much-needed refresh. The new Amarok is based on the new Ford Ranger platform. Have you ever seen the Ranger Raptor? Imagine if they did something like that for the Amarok. This generation still comes with the TDI option as well as the option for a manual transmission. This is also the only vehicle on this list that is still being produced, so maybe there is some hope that it'll be brought to the US. Well, if you made it to the end of the video, thanks for watching and listening to me yap about Volkswagens for however long this ends up being. Please like and subscribe so I can keep making cool shit like this. If you want to see me buy and build one of the cars on this list, let me know down in the comments which one you'd want to see me build. Also, if you want to support the channel, head to clap.co and check out my merch. Everything I make for merch goes instantly right back into the channel and helps me keep building my cars and making cool videos just like this. Alright, catch you in the next one.